I'll go first because I have a very obvious one. It's the easiest pick for me on my board. It's Asia Wilson. Like, this is the best player on the best team. She's the center of what they're doing in a lot of ways without having to be top 5 in scoring or top 5 in like any statistical category. Like, it is a very dominant defensive season for her. Leads the league in blocks per game. But like, everything works around her. Like, the room the shooters get, the sets they can run, everything as it starts with her. Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, Parker, like their whole team works off of what Asia Wilson is and does. So to me, it's just like, this is the best player in the best team. This is just like, this is the person, by the way, and I don't want to leave it this. This is who should be on the cover of the WNBA edition of NBA 2K24. Like, this is the face of the league right now. She's a great personality, a great player. Everything about the WNBA like should run through Asia, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go to another ace just to, I guess, continue the celebration of a great team. And it's, to me, their second best player, but also somebody equally irreplaceable on their team, and it's Jackie Young. She leads the WNBA in true shooting percentage. She's shooting almost 50% from deep. She's their best wing defender. She is versatile because she is pretty much a big guard and can do things that extend to, effectively like a power forward all the way to a point guard. She's improved over the time that she's been in the league on kind of at everything offensively, and 2-to-1 plus assist to turnover ratio this year. And the most interesting part of this, and I agree with you, Asia is the best player on the team, and her MVP trophies indicate that. But the Aces offense, actually, when Jackie Young is on the court, is the unit that is kind of the best of any in the WNBA. She has the best like individual offensive rating in the league, and that's a testament in general, but also for a player who wasn't thought of to be much of an offensive threat when she came in. I mean, I know you can't give a player credit in a single season for their development, but she's one of the better development stories in basketball the past 5-10 years.
Yeah, there was a story this week in the Las Vegas Sun about her shooting improvement. And some of the quotes were like very sports cliche quotes, right? Like, you didn't get, like, her and Becky Hammon have obviously been in the very, like, she was the number one pick, played at a high level in college. Becky Hammon's Becky Hammon. Like, these are people that have been around the media and are not going to like totally just divulge everything. Like, she gave, one of the things she gave, which is a classic athlete cliche, was aggressive mindset and being confident. That's just like, what things can I check, But like, it feels true. It feels somewhat true. As much as there is work, like this is year 5 for her.
It's an interesting evolution because I did a big profile of Arike Gumbawale like 2.5 years ago, and talked to Muffet McGraw, who was both of their coach at Notre Dame, and she asked me not to include this, but I think it's fine to divulge now for the people who might hear this. She was surprised when Jackie Young went first overall in that draft and over Arike. And she was their coach, and she loved both of them. It wasn't even that she thought Jackie Young was some sort of trash player. Part of why Young got picked was because she was younger, but then she gets into this system in Vegas, which is coached by Bill Laimbeer, and he just seems to have an allergy to his team shooting threes, and I think like willfully held her back as a player. And then Becky Hammon comes, and Young takes 1-2 steps back from wherever she had been shooting because she was a good mid-range shooter, and it just flows from there, and the efficiency continues. So just a cool story and a cool player, and probably not done getting better. So very exciting. I agree Asia would be the pick if you had to pick an ace, but since you took her, I went a different place.
All right, let's go to a player we both have on our list, and that's, I think, the favorite to win MVP right now. A player who I think at age 28 is arguably having her best season as a pro. Mm-hmm. That's Breanna Stewart, the head of what she is. What the Liberty are not necessarily a super team, but she is what makes them super. Is the way that I would say it.
Yeah, I mean, she to me is. We don't have to have this debate, but to me, she's the best player in the WNBA. And
yeah, I think it's her and Asia 1-2 in that order. That would be my list.
And it's really a versatility, an overall impact, and a degree of difficulty thing. And it's always tricky to sort of say, well, one player has worse teammates and they do the same amount or more, so therefore they're better. I mean, better is subjective and everything else, but I just think that what Stewie is able to do in all aspects of the game, she's leading the league in rebounding. She has a career high in assists already, not total, but per game. Second in the league in scoring. All of that with completely new teammates. And the biggest stat that I have for her is she has a plus 11 net rating. When they have a plus 11 net rating when she's on, and they are minus 8 when she's off. No other player on the team is anywhere near that differential of plus 19, and she theoretically plays for a super team, right? So it shouldn't be that way. I know that like Steph Curry off is one of the Warriors' biggest issues, but they got Kevin Durant, and that wasn't too big of a problem. Like, it should not be this way for the Liberty, and that's a separate issue, but she's doing everything she can to make them great. And look, I mean, as much as they might not be like a good bet to beat Vegas, they are very clearly the second best team in the league, and that's not nothing.
Well, look, I think you could see a world where she's averaging the most points she's ever had on a per-game basis this year, which is not nothing. Three-point volume is near as high as ever been, and the best percentage at 5 a game. Mm-hmm. Incredibly deadly in twos again, which is just not a surprise. But that even you could see maybe that gets a little bit better from where it's been in years past. She has one outlier year in the twos where she's at 57.6% on twos in 2018. It's never been quite that high, but she's above 50%. That's very good. There's a world, Brendon, where she is like nuclear for enough, and like they get just enough for everybody else. Like they can make that. It wouldn't shock me if that happens, right? Like I wouldn't be like that's implausible. It would feel like what's a good comp for like this team, this Liberty team beats the Aces? Is it like 2018 Cavsy? Like is it that level of?
No, I would say it's probably like 2016 Cavs, right? I mean,
okay.
Yeah, so 2019 Raptors, although I don't want to put that on the Aces, that would take us in a direction that's sad. But
yeah.
No, I think that's right. I mean, that's why I keep holding out and kind of giving the caveat when we talk about this is it's like it's not unrealistic or crazy. I think the Liberty are a deeper team, one, right? And I think they have probably, you would say, a better defensive ceiling, right, than the Aces have, depending on who's on the court for them, and the best player, right? So, like, that's why we talked about it the way we did at the beginning of the season. It's just, well, now the games have been played and we feel a little differently, but I also think there's an element, this offense is more complicated than anything Stewie's played in, anything probably any of these players have ever played in, and that is very obvious when you watch them. That combined with the defensive lineups, maybe not the best defensive lineups, maybe not being the best overall talent lineups, and the awkwardness of that, it's all kind of heading in that direction. But I had Stewie as well on my team, so yeah, I don't think you could make a list like this and not.
No, I had two locks. They were Asia Wilson and Brianna Stewart. All right, Brendon, who is your next one?
Yeah, let's go with Alyssa Thomas. So. Okay. She is. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure most people finding this on YouTube as a clip are going to have been watching the WNBA and seeking out content about it. But if maybe our normal listeners or some of the people watching the full show are finding this, and Alyssa Thomas is not a household name like these other players we've been talking about so far, watch the Connecticut Sun. She is a freak. She is a one-woman fast break at any time. She can get it and go and actually generate a good shot. She is leading the league in assists and steals and is second in rebounding. And she basically has not ever fully recovered from 2 torn labrums. So this is a person who cannot lift her arms like above her head and is still doing this. She's 31, maybe having her best season ever. And I would personally have her probably second in MVP voting ahead of either ace, and that is partially because they cancel each other out, but partially because Alyssa Thomas is that good.
I believe set a record for most triple-doubles in the NBA season a couple weeks ago, which is not nothing. Like that itself is incredibly impressive. That team is first team to beat the Aces, and it wasn't because of her, right? That was the DeWanna Bonner goes off
explosion.
Game. Yeah, just utter explosion. But I would agree that she's been the best player on that team. She is the reason that No, and I think you could. She would be the reason that if they got into a series against, let's say, a Mystics team that isn't healthy, and that might be where they're headed with the Lane injury and all the other kind of knocks that team has picked up, or if they just get the Liberty on their side of the bracket, and Liberty, just like something we didn't really say about them, is it's their first year together. Like, there is a cohesion, and there's not as many games, and it is like a whole process to bring all this together for them. Like, wouldn't shock me if, like, she has a monster series and they win and then they're like in the finals or something, right? Like, that wouldn't shock me, and it would be because of Alyssa Thomas. Like, she is the reason that if you want to watch the Sun, like, that to me is like the reason to chase down that team. It's because of Alyssa Thomas.
Yeah, a little bit more freedom for her under the new coach, Stephanie White, and she has a 37% assist rate as effectively like a center, a point center who, because she can handle the ball, can play with other bigs, but is really, a center. And like, yeah, just her basketball reference page is a marvel. At the top of it is position forward, shoots, and then it has left crossed out because that's what she used to do, and now she shoots right-handed. Like, she is just an athlete that makes no sense, and I love her. So, she has to be on any group that defines this team because of how great they've been and the fact that it's her best year even into her 30s.
All right, my next one, Ryan Howard, Atlanta Dream. This is something this is what I pulled from Jack Maloney's most recent power rankings. These are stats from Jack. You should go read his power rankings at CBS every week. They had a recent 5-game winning streak, their longest winning streak as a franchise since 2018. It's half a decade. Howard over that stretch, 24.2, 4.2 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 2.2 steals, and shooting 55.8% over that stretch. That's an incredible dominant stretch for last year's Rookie of the Year. And look, maybe this is me in my bubble a little bit, Brendon, and maybe it's just because that team isn't the highest profile team at this point in time. But to me, and especially with some of the other posts coming into the league in the next couple of years, I think it's going to be really important to not lose track of the fact that Ryan Howard is great and is only going to get better. And if the Dream become something, this isn't a title contender this year, but if they get there a year, 2 years, 3 years, it's going to be on Ryan Howard's shoulders. It's going to be because she just keeps hitting these higher levels, and she's been awesome this year, was awesome last year, but that 5-game stretch was just chef's kiss stuff from her.
Yeah, the 43-point game against the Sparks I watched, and when she's on, there's really nothing like it in basketball, and it's funny for somebody so talented because it almost does feel like aggressiveness is one of the things holding her back. And part of that is rounding out her game, right? I don't know if she fully trusts her handle to kind of create advantages against, one-on-one or running a pick and roll. She knows where the ball should go, but I don't think she necessarily is always all the way there as just a like playmaker, passer, creating kind of for her teammates and whatnot. But when she's going, you're kind of like, well, it feels like you do have all of that. You know what I mean? And she would have been on my list if you didn't take her, but I saw yours when I was making mine, so I didn't put her on. But yeah, I mean, she kind of has like the way I've always thought of her comp wise is like what Diana Taurasi's old person game has become. Not what Diana Taurasi was when she was young, because that was like, Kobe type of like just everywhere, Maya Moore, Arike Gumbawale type of scoring. But Ryan is like what Diana is now, except she's starting with that incredible shooting ability and working inside and working as a passer and everything. I mean, just the threat of her coming off of screens and playing as an off-ball shooter and scorer is enough to freak out a defense, let alone whatever she's going to become, because she was pretty young when she came out of the draft. She's only 23.
Yeah, look, she can come across the lane, and it's like just make these tough middies, and it's like you have that skill, that size as a guard. Like, you're in a really, really good spot. And like it unlocks so much for you as a scorer if you can make these tough buckets. You can be what the kids call a hooper without needing to be even dominant. And then you're also willing to spot up and space around the floor for others. Like, that's such a versatile, amazing piece to have. Quick aside on the Mercury, Brendon. Tough times, eh?
Yeah. Fired their coach. The team doesn't make sense. It doesn't have Skylar Diggins-Smith on it. And yeah, not a great year. And they were injured for a lot. So no Mercury players on this. But no, I mean, Ryan also has elite athleticism. She is a defensive playmaker when she's locked in on that end. She can kind of clamp you in isolation. She can create turnovers and then, get out into transition and make something happen. She's 6'2", as basically, like you said, a guard. That's pretty scary. I mean, she's the same height as Alyssa Thomas, who I was just calling a center. You know what I mean? So it's something else.
Big guard. I'm a sucker for big guards in general, and this is just like, like the shooting and creation skill set for her is just, it's so well rounded, and like can kind of, if you put the ball in her hands wherever on the floor, I would feel very comfortable she's going to make tough jumpers, tough middies, tough threes. Like she's about those buckets. Is what I would say.
Jewell Loyd. Let's go to another guard on my list, which is
Gold Mamba.
Gold Mamba, yes. She might break the single season WNBA record for total points, which currently spots number 1 and 2 are owned by Tana Taurasi. But Jewell is headed there. And obviously some of that longer season than we've ever had, as I was talking about to start this off. But the impressive part of this with Jewell Loyd is the last time she had a season without Sue Bird or Brianna Stewart, they both were injured. In 2019, she had the least efficient season of her career and the highest turnover rate. And right then and there, you would have looked at it and just said, okay, she needs others, right? She, in order to be an efficient player, she needs to be set up and have the floor spacing and have, size and whatever to balance the floor, spread things out, and make her best. This year, she's proving that completely wrong. She has an astronomical usage rate, but is the second most efficient season she's ever had and the lowest turnover rate. So she has transported what made her special as a third best player, or even sometimes, fourth, to being the best player on what is a bad team, but is still, that's impressive. You can't take, if somebody's making shots efficiently, it doesn't matter what the talent is. And if anything, you might give her a bump up because the rest of it is so bad.
Well, look, and this is her team now, right? This has been the transition to this being her team. This is the transition to this being a new era for the Storm, and like she's kind of had to shoulder some of that for a team that, as you said, isn't very good. There are bright spots. They got Gabby Williams back. They have Ezzy. Like, they have interesting players, but it hasn't resulted in wins yet. The standard that Bird and Stewie kept up here for so long, just it isn't there at the rest. And that's not Jewell Loyd's fault, but she's 29. She's in her prime. It's kind of like this is her chance to kind of be some of this now, and that in itself is kind of interesting context to watch her in for me in a different way. Right? Like it's a whole different. It's she's obviously been through this before when there was injuries to those players, particularly Stewie missed a year with the Achilles. But this is your franchise now, and that's such an interesting place. There's in an episode of me shouting out pieces, Lindsay Arc I can't pronounce her last name. D'Arcangelo at The Athletic wrote about Jewell Loyd. Went and talked to her head coaches, quotes from the coaches there as well. Paints a good portrait of where she's at age 29.
Yeah, very, very confident. Very, very indicative of kind of taking inspiration from Kobe. But she would have told you this season was coming, and she's always been one of the better bucket getters. But a lot of those players aren't valuable in the W. They're not always efficient. They're not always driving, winning. Arike Gumbuale is not on our list, right? She's having an awesome season. She's a very talented bucket getter, but she's not efficient. And for that reason, sometimes the team statistically looks better when she's not out there, whereas Jewell is kind of the opposite. This is the worst team in the W, but they are getting outscored by 23 points per 100 possessions when she's off the court versus only like 4 when she's on. Like that, the impact is almost as great as Stewie. It's just a bad team.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of the Dallas Wings, I have Tia McCowan. This is also from Jack Maloney. They're 6-3 with her in the lineup, 4-6 without her. And in McCowan's 238 minutes, they have a plus 13.1 net rating. The second team to beat the Aces. This is the most important player on that team that is somewhere in the standings, that is somewhere of note in the playoff hunt. She's been their most important player. There are as the stats and as the film and the record indicates, Brendon, it's just a different team when she's been on the floor for them. She missed 9 games. Like, that's not nothing. But if she can be healthy the rest of the year, be around the rest of the year, they're going to be in a really good spot to be a very hard out, I think, when we get to the real stuff.
It's interesting. The stats obviously are unmistakable. She has the best net rating on the team and that record and everything else. It's unorthodox to think of her as the most important player on that team, but she might be. I just worry with players like that. I would have said Natasha Howard, and then while you were talking, I looked and her net rating is just fine. I think that's not the end all be all. I think Natasha Howard has, as she does with a lot of teams that she's been on, gives you a pretty unique look as a big who can defend and shoot. Like that's just sort of a cheat code in basketball, so she's going to have that impact. But the ability with the more sort of defense into offense and physical style that they're trying to play, taking the ball out of Arike's hands a little bit more and playing to some other strengths, McCowan's size is just such a difference maker. That is a big reason that they were competitive in those 2 games against the Aces and beat them in one of them. It's just, we talked about the Aces after that game a little bit, and at the end of it, Asia just isolated her and she couldn't stop her. I know it's Asia Wilson, but that's just the tough thing with a traditional center who has that type of size, is they are exploitable in certain ways. So if it gets them over the hump and into the playoffs, like, it's a conversation for a different day, but it is a question.
I will just add that as much as she can be inefficient, Arike is really fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
Arike is
and probably a better
awesome.
Season from Arike, I would say, this year overall. I mean, efficiency is still going to be a question, but she's buying in. Her usage is down a little bit, and they're winning. So, I mean, what else can you ask for?
How seriously would you take them as like an upset possibility in the playoffs?
Probably not much. But I mean, the early rounds, it's best of 3 and anything can happen. But I think they had some clutch issues at the beginning of the year, so maybe their record actually could be even better, and maybe I would feel differently if that wasn't the case. I just think offensively what they are when games do kind of tighten up is a question. Can they, for an entire close fourth quarter, get great shots consistently is a question. And Satu Sabali has been awesome too. She could have easily been on this list. So they have options. I don't know if it'll come together in time to take that big of a step forward, I guess.
This is just how far ahead the Aces are in the West right now. They're 19-2. The Wings are second, and they're 11-9.
Yeah. I think I saw that somewhere too. I mean, it's right there, but yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I was like, all right, what's the standings right now? And it's like the Aces are 19-2, the Wings are 11-9, and the Lynx are 9-11 in the third place team in the Western Conference.
Weird league, right?
Yeah. That Aces team is also just it's just ridiculous. That team, we did a whole segment on this 2 episodes ago. That team is just very good argument that that's the most dominant team in the NBA or the WNBA right now.
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah,
I think the
unselfishness and two-way ability and the fit of all the players, it's something else.
Yeah.
All right, AKA why we had 2 Aces players on our list and probably could have had at least 2 more, Yeah,
you could have just done let's run down the list, the Aces starting 5, and called it a day if you really wanted to, but we didn't.
Yeah. All right, my last one is Aaliyah Boston.
This is the one, Brendon, that I was too much of a coward to put on because, am I putting the cart too much ahead of the horse for a team that has now lost a bunch of games in a row, but is certainly better now that she is there and she's been awesome from the get go. There's no doubt about it. But I was like, am I putting the cart a little bit too ahead of the horse there? So I went in a different direction. But Aaliyah Boston, talk about it.
I just think you feel it sometimes with rookie seasons. In both leagues. I think Asia had this. I think Stewie had this. I think Brittany Griner had this 10 years ago. You go in the NBA, Luka, LeBron, Anthony Davis. I mean, a lot of those players were number 1 overall picks, but so was she. And, that doesn't always mean you're destined for success. I think she's just that type of player. She's already one of the more effective, productive, and valuable players in the league. And yes, they've lost a bunch in a row, but that includes, as they've had all year, a bunch of very narrow losses, including one to the Aces. Just the last game they played before we recorded this was heading into the All-Star break against the Liberty, which went to overtime. They are that frisky young team that largely because of her, is way more competitive than you would think they have any right to be. she's making a 3 to send that game to overtime. Like, there's just stuff happening where you're like, this is a special player. I know that's not the best analysis, but all the stats back it up too.
Yeah, she's the reason they're taking a step forward. Like, to me, it's like that organization is going to change because she's there. I really think it might be as simple as that to me, Brendon. That's the kind of player that changes your culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's been. And if they get lucky in the draft next year, off and cooking. Who's the perfect player of that class to pair with her to like get them from like where they are now to top 2 or 3 team in the East? Who's the right
this
player?
Upcoming year?
Yeah.
I mean, any of the guards, really, to be honest. I like kind of the physicality that they have if you add Melissa Smith in there. So maybe I lean like Van Lith or Becker's a little bit over Clark, although Clark is plenty. Caitlin Clark is going to be a team unto herself. So I almost wonder if there's like too much going on and you want somebody that's a little more, playmaker first, scoring, as a distant second type of thing. But it's nice to win and develop and still get a nice high pick, which is where they're headed.
Yeah, my brain, if they couldn't get Clark or Beckers, if they end up with like the 5th pick or something and those 2 off the board, it would be Van Lith just because she's so tough. Mm-hmm. Like, not the same shot maker, not the same size you're getting in terms of Beckers or Clark, but like probably the number 1 shit talker among those players.
Yeah.
And like, even if you ended up, yeah, right. And if you ended up with like Georgia Moore, like I wouldn't hate that, right? Like someone who can really shoot it, someone who can still like run your point. Like, I think there's good options for them.
It's good that it's a lot of guards and they need a guard. Like that's nice. They already have their front court of the future with Smith and Boston, and then it's just which of these great options do we get to add to the backcourt?
Yeah, or if they get lucky and like one of the guards they want off the board, or let's say they're 3rd and like maybe the guards somehow go like 1-2 or something, and another team like really wants like Cameron Brink or Angel Reese, they could be like, give us all of your stuff, and they would be in a really good position for them. I would say long term, and it starts with Lee Boston. All right, my last one, we'll go quick and listen. Nafessa Collier, comes back after giving birth, leads the league in made field goals so far, and is now like the lead. Like the Lynx are not kind of at their apex anymore, obviously. Like, it is a different era for that franchise as well. I kind of have a theme with some of these things, Brendon, but she's like the tentpole of that team now. It's her show, and she's maybe not at the level of an Asia Wilson or whatever, but I think she's been really great, has made a ton of field goals, and is the driver of that team that is 3rd in the West right now, and it's still the Lynx. And so I went with Nafessa Collier.
Yeah, to me, Nafisa she's been, I think I wrote a column about her rookie year when I was covering the league, and I actually had an awards vote, and I voted her rookie of the year without a doubt over Enrique, and gave her, she was on my MVP ballot. She's been one of the best two-way players since the minute she stepped on a WNBA court. Last year was a down year, obviously, and only played 4 games, but she has hovered around 60% true shooting on a pretty high usage, as well as one of the more versatile defenders since the minute she was a pro. And she's also adding more legitimate shot creation and, kind of isolation scoring as she goes here in year 5. So I'm one of her biggest fans, and I hope that they can kind of reset this thing and put her in a position to be on a competitive team sooner rather than later again, because I think she's good enough to be probably the best player on a championship team.
Also, she is involved with Breanna Stewart, her former UConn teammate, on this new league, and I'm really curious to see her as one of the faces of that and maybe become a little bit more well-known as a result of being involved there. I think that's going to be a really cool way for her to kind of... She's like a pretty quiet, like... There's a column about her in her hometown paper, the St. Louis Dispatch this week, that talked around. It's like very, very calm person, but like that's the kind of thing where I think like her profile might get bigger as a result of being at the forefront of this. I mean, she did like a SportsCenter interview about it, which is not nothing for the W players.